America's oldest homeless shelter is now catering to more New Yorkers than ever. And it's not just the poor that line up for a hot meal. It's the average working American who can't make ends meet.
During this really cold snap especially, typically the guests that stay overnight, they get a meal and they stay overnight. The ones that don't go out because we don't have enough beds for everybody. We do a lottery, but when it's cold like this, cafeteria will be transformed with mattresses on the floor. Every hallway, every space that we can put a chair, we won't let anybody go outside tonight because you die in this kind of weather.
On this edition of Inside Out, we will discover how life has changed for many Americans since the Great Recession, and we'll take you on an exclusive tour inside one of the busy shelters of New York City. Now, the U.S. economy has shown some signs of recovery after the Great Recession, and official unemployment rates have dipped. But the economic outlook for many working families remains to look bleak. According to the U.S. Census Bureau, nearly 1/3 of working families don't earn enough to make ends meet. Most American workers are able to find jobs, but those jobs are often low-paying.
There has to be job growth in America. I see people standing out in line in the cold waiting to get jobs. They want to have jobs, but they have to get better job opportunities and higher wages also. The minimum wage has to be raised a little bit, enough where people can sustain a decent living and kind of nurture people back towards the middle class.
David Sweeney is an economist based in New York. He's lived in the city for the past 20 years.
Right across the street from his office, David tells me that people are lined up almost on a daily basis in hope of being hired for one of the many minimum wage jobs.
So Susan, those people I just showed you in line, most likely that's a minimum wage job, and there's another possibility that that's not enough for them to survive on, and they have to go to these soup kitchens or food places where they give out food to the people, and it just doesn't seem right. And then there's a push to cut those back. They cut the food stamps back, the U.S. government did, and now people are getting less of those. So this really makes it tough for people. Now, Bloomberg was a mayor for 12 years, and all he was about was business, rezoning. This is the worst it's been.
A quick look at recent statistics show over 146 million Americans are either poor or low income. 57% of all American children live in a home that is either poor or low income. 32% of all working families are considered to be among the, quote, working poor. But that's part of the story. Many can't find jobs and need help as they jump through the bureaucratic hurdles of public assistance and often end up in the streets or relying on shelters for a bed to sleep and a warm meal.
There should not be people sleeping on the streets, in train stations. There are not enough housing, affordable housing. You see that in New York, where people are just being priced out of the market. Where are they going to go? How are they going to feed their families? You have women who are single parents, and they're having trouble feeding their kids. It's heartbreaking.
Earlier, I headed to the New York City Rescue Mission. They not only cater to those that are homeless, but the growing number of the working poor here in New York City. Established in 1872, it's the oldest shelter of its kind across the United States.
My name is Craig Mays. I'm the director of this mission, which happens to be, we're kind of proud of this. It's the oldest mission, 1872, so for 142 years we've been caring for the poor and homeless in New York City. And just so you know, we're under construction. We're actually doubling our space and doubling our capacity. So you're going to see a building in progress right now. For the first time in our history, we're going to have overnight emergency shelter for women, but we're also doubling our capacity for emergency shelter for men and also doubling our men that are in a year-long program, recovery program. So lots of work going on here to offer help to even more. So we have currently have 30 beds for men that are in a residential recovery program. So this is their home. They live here for a year. They address issues that underlie their homelessness or poverty. So it's addictions, it's work issues, it's education. So this is their dorm now, but after the renovation, this will be the dorm for our women who will be an emergency shelter. So 30 women will live here every night, come out of the cold or out of the heat and have food, shower, clothing, a nice bed to sleep in, and hopefully stabilize their life a little bit.
The men will then go upstairs to the 6th floor, and the beds will be double in size, another clear indication for the increasing demand of these forms of assistance.
1 out of 3 New Yorkers is in a situation where they're not adequately able to feed themselves. And so that makes the population, that's in the millions of people. And you know, when you're in Manhattan, you see all the wealth and you see all the building, you don't really see it, but it's hidden. Even in Manhattan, there are pockets here of real poverty. And then you get out in the other boroughs like the Bronx and parts of Brooklyn and Queens, there's a lot of poverty. So it's a big problem. Last year, the Department of Homeless Services for New York City was putting the census for homeless population in like 50,000 or so. But that's just people that come into the shelter system so they can actually keep track of them. But they're putting that number in just 12 months now up around 63,000. Wow. So are they counting better? Is there an increase? I think it's both. Definitely there's an increase. And we're seeing here at the Mission an increase in demand for what we offer to people.
Even from last year?
Even from last year.
As we head down to the kitchen, Mays tells me more about the people they serve.
We've also seen an increase in the population of the working poor. We serve the homeless here, but we also serve the working poor. Let me go this way. And this zip code where the Mission exists is actually listed recently as the 7th most expensive place to live in the country. Yet at the same time, we have a population within the zip code that is extremely poor. So we do a food pantry 3 times a week where they can come and they can get a bag of staple food. They typically have jobs, but when it comes down to whether they're going to pay rent or they're going to put food on the table, they got to pay rent. So they're not able to put adequate food on the table. So they come here and we provide pasta and beans, and if we get fresh produce that we can give away, we do that as well. So we definitely see that demand growing where we're giving more of that away. The lines are getting longer, the people that sign up for it, the numbers are increasing. But we might be able to seat 60 or 70 at a time, but for every dinner meal, we'll serve between 250 and 300. So they come in, and as they leave, we bring more in.
Pedro is the chef at the Mission, and he's been here for 7 years. You may remember him on the hit TV show Chopped, the cooking show competition on Food Network. Pedro was a contestant on the episode Hero Chefs, chefs that are considered heroes in their communities.
I'm the head chef at the New York City Rescue Mission, serving at least 500 homeless people a day.
Ready to go.
And we cook all kinds of food, Italian, Spanish food, French. Not only am I the chef at the New York City Rescue Mission, but at my local church, I'm the Mercy Minister.
Let's bow our heads and let's pray.
8 years ago, I was going down a wrong road. I was homeless, I was an addict, and this church helped me recover. I was able to go to culinary school, and food changed my life. I'm going on Chopped to win for the homeless, the forgotten. I'm going up there for them.
Today's menu is Spanish rice, stuffed plantains, roast chicken, and butternut squash soup. Every day, they get a protein, starch, and vegetable, and then Pedro gets creative with the menu. We arrived right in time for lunch.
So I've served a lot of people. I don't have the exact number, but now whatever number that was, it's doubled. And it's going to double as we continue to, obviously, you see the construction and you see what's going on. So yeah, it's going to double and we're going to increase. I think that there's more working poor in New York. I think the face of the homeless has changed. It's not only the person that doesn't have a job, it's the person that has a job and living check to check. I just read an article today that in the airport, there's 2 types of security wages. We can continue to serve him. There's the $8 and the $17. There's the guy, and it said it just like this. The guy is making $8 an hour, and he's working security, doing the same job as the other person, but he has to eat at soup kitchens. So the soup kitchen is providing a service for those who are working as well. It's no longer, the way it was in 1872 or 1911 or 1920. Excuse me, I'm just going to grab these plantains. Yeah, pretty good, right? Vehicle of meat. Here you go, sir.
Working with Pedro is El Salvador, along with Mike, who is helping out and is part of the recovery program.
I am from the Gulf Coast of Alabama. I'm from a little town, I was born in a little town called Cushla, Alabama. And if anybody's from Cushla is watching this, roll Tide, go Wolfpack. I lost my job because I was drinking too much.
After losing his job, Mike started hitchhiking, hoping to make it to Boston.
I was hitchhiking, trying to avoid New York. Started my travels back around July-ish, somewhere around there, and thought I would bust my way up to Boston, go up to B-Town, and maybe work somewhere around the New England coast, trying to work on the water. I've done a lot of my work on the water down in the Gulf Coast between Alabama, Mississippi, Louisiana, and I got a ride in what was the name of the town? Allentown or something like that. I think is where I was, and I got like I said, I hitchhiked the whole way up, and got a ride all the way up there from Allentown, and this guy's like, "Look, I gotta go over to George Washington Bridge. Just let me know where you want me to let you out." So I was like, "All right." Well, there was no place for him to let me out. So I ended up in New York. Didn't know where I was. The first time I've been in New York, I come over, it was 178th Street is where I was. Right on at the GW Bridge, right. And I didn't know what to do or where to go, so I just started walking. And I walked from 178th Street to here.
After a brief relapse, Mike returned here and says there's nowhere else he'd rather be.
I'll tell you what, though, I wouldn't want to be anywhere else right now than where I'm at.
Really?
Yeah, really. For one, I'm sober. Yeah. And for two, I'm doing something good in my life that doesn't require me of breaking the law or being regretful for it. Yeah, because I've always heard the saying. They got the sayings, "You're right where you're supposed to be." You're here for a reason. And I hated that saying. Hated it with a passion because I didn't want to hear that. Because I didn't want to think I was supposed to be here. I'm supposed to be out making money and doing what I want to do. But I'm doing exactly where God wants me at. You say God to a lot of people in the world, and they're like, "Oh, God, what's this God?" Da, 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 da.
Were you like that before?
Never. No, never. I've always believed in God. I just always ran from Him. That's how I ended up in New York.
The New York City Rescue Mission is supported by caring individuals, churches, foundations, and businesses. Less than 2% of the mission's revenue comes from government funds.
Actually, of our budget, there's about 1 or 2% that somehow has a government connection to it, which might be some food grants that we get, but we're an independent organization, not relying on the government, which is good because taxes and, just like the SNAP issue, right? Yeah. The supplemental, they $5 billion cut out of the budget. So now families that were receiving that are receiving about $29 less per week to buy food. And so where are they going to look for help? They're going to come here. And if we're getting it from the government, guess what? We got cut as well. So we don't mind the government. We're not anti-government. Yeah. We're just trying to be a privately run organization that counts on the goodness of New Yorkers to fund us.
There is also a learning center.
I actually think when we expand and have 250 people living here every night, we're going to be able to add a staff person whose whole job will be job placement in aftercare. Part of it is going to be networking with businesses and organizations. So in advance we say, hey, can you give us 2 or 3 positions a year, and we'll get guys ready for it, and then you can give them a chance. Yeah. Because you can't, if you go through a program like this and you can't get work, you can't get a home, you can't buy food, so.
Is there a limit on how long someone can stay
here?
Yeah,
well, right now it's 9 months to a year. So pretty much 9 months is the program, dealing with issues of recovery, addiction, whatever it is, and then the last 3 months are transition, so it's doing job interviews. If they get a job, it's helping them to save money up, trying to find affordable housing, helping them get into that affordable housing. So
ultimately, their goal is to turn no one away.
So we might say 50% of the men that come here have alcohol or addiction problems. The other 50%, it's family issues, it's child support issues, it's loss of employment. So we address those as well. So we kind of put everybody on an individual track. We assess where they're at, what their needs are, and develop a program to help them.
New York's new mayor, Bill de Blasio, has proposed his first budget plan, which aims to help the homeless and low-income New Yorkers, and reverses many of the misguided and harmful cutbacks proposed by the previous administration.
Ours is a progressive administration. Our budget will be a progressive budget, one that puts us on a road to giving hardworking New Yorkers a fair shot. And I want to make something absolutely clear, because I think the discourse in this town and probably all over the country in recent years has missed this point. There is nothing mutually exclusive between being both fiscally responsible and economically progressive, something we have to do in tandem. It may sound counterintuitive to some, but we need a balanced budget and a strong and stable city government to facilitate our fight against inequality. We have to do both at the same time. The reason is being fiscally responsible is what allows us to be a healthy, functioning government that is better positioned to serve people's needs and build a pathway to greater equality.
In addition to these highlights, the de Blasio fiscal year 2015 budget plan, of course, includes other more highly publicized proposals that will enormously help homeless and poor New Yorkers.
Forward. And then our people have faced another challenge because of the federal cuts to food stamps, to the SNAP program. Food stamp totals will be reduced. The food stamp allotment will be reduced for literally 1 million New York City households in need. Let me do that again. Food stamp benefits will be reduced because of the farm bill that was passed last week. 1 million New York City households will get less support, regardless of the dire circumstances they find themselves in.
I think that you're going to have poor. You're always going to have poor. Are we doing a better job? Are the numbers increasing or decreasing? And I don't think the numbers lie. I think the problem is becoming greater. There was just an election for a new mayor in this city, and one of the platforms of what they talked about a lot in the discussion was the inequality, or the gap that seems to be getting bigger. So the rich are getting richer, and the poor are getting poorer. And the mayor is talking about policies that are going to try to change that. But I think it's a big problem to solve. It's integrated into the whole economic system, the whole taxation system, and in the meantime, shelters like ours, we're left with the problem of actually trying to put more food on the table and creating more space for people while we figure this out.
We wrapped up our tour at the shelter on the 6th floor, under construction now, but with a vision of bringing hope and security to the increasing number of New Yorkers who need it.
So this is going to be one of our dormitories that will house 80 transient men. So there'll be 40 bunk beds in here. Scattered throughout the room, there'll be some lockers to put stuff in overnight. And then over here will be showers and restrooms. And in through this door is laundry. We have to clean all the sheets every night, all the towels, and start over the next day. So it's pretty Spartan, but it's safe, it's warm, it's dry. And they'll come up here after they've had a meal. They'll come up and get a shower, and they'll get a good night's sleep. And then we'll feed them breakfast in the morning before we send them out for the day.
With millions of families and individuals falling through the cracks and living on the edge of poverty, the need for adequate paying jobs, technology, and education is more crucial than ever before. Now, some might argue that this is easier said than done, but the question is, what is our other option? That's all the time we have for this edition of Inside Out. Thanks so much for staying with us and watching. Remember, you can always send me your emails to insideout@susanmadaris.com. I'm always looking forward to them. You can also follow me on Twitter for latest updates and discussions. Until next week in another show, from all of us here in New York City, goodbye.